everyone in the world except for themselves, for their stunning loss this week. Thousands rioting in the streets causing mayhem as they refuse to accept the democratic process. I am Trish Regan. Welcome, everyone, to the Intelligence Report. The Clinton campaign and its supporters just cannot admit they did anything wrong, blaming the FBI, blaming Donna Brazile, and, of course, the media for her stunning loss. Meanwhile, outgoing Senator Harry Reid adding fuel to the fire, issuing this statement. Let's take a look. The election of Donald Trump, he says, has emboldened the forces of hate and bigotry in America. If this is going to be a time of healing, we must first put the responsibility for healing where it belongs, at the feet of Donald Trump, a sexual predator who lost the popular vote and fueled his campaign with bigotry and hate. Harry Reid, you see, wants more protests. The people have spoken. Hillary Clinton has lost. And yet thousands, like Mr. Harry Reid, refuse to accept it. On the third night of protests, things came to a head in Portland, Oregon, where people sparked fires and smashed windows, chanting, "We reject the president-elect." Trump, at first, firing back on Twitter, saying professional protesters incited by the media are protesting, very unfair. But early today, he said, love the fact that the small groups of protesters last night have passion for our great country. We will all come together and be proud. Can you imagine if the right were actually out there, the ones protesting? Though, as one conservative commentator told me the other day, that would never happen because, you see, conservatives don't riot. Nonetheless, can you imagine? I mean, instead of feeding the discourse, the media would be condemning it. Joining me right now, Ohio State Senator Capri Cafaro and Jay Shabria, a former senior advisor to Ohio Governor John Kasich. Good to have you here. Capri, I'll start with you. I get that members of your party are upset. They're upset they lost. But this, and let's take a look at what I'm talking about. This, let's see it, is an attempt at anarchy. It is an attempt at chaos. They are undermining our democratic process, everything that we stand for, which is a peaceful transition of power. Right. Capri, what do these people want?
You know, I think they're not necessarily sure what they want. Yesterday, I was passing the new school here in Manhattan, and I saw people with 3 or 4 different types of signs. One sign said something to the effect of, listen to the new generation. The next sign had something about Obama and climate. I mean, so, it's a little bit disjointed. And this is, frankly, one of the reasons why Democrats are unsuccessful. I often say Democrats don't win elections, Republicans lose them. And it's because we have not had a cohesive and coherent message to the American people. And so, with the protesters, the only thing that I would say about them is that 2 things, I guess. One being that if they really want to affect change, this is not the most efficient way to do it.
Correct.
And 2, I will say that I understand the concern that some have, with the LGBT community potentially being, quote unquote, at risk. I know people have been attacked on the streets.
I mean, Donald Trump actually has been way more progressive on that front than a lot of folks.
I don't disagree.
For years.
But, some of his more fringe supporters, and I'm not saying, I don't say that people are part of the basket of deplorables. For goodness sake, my entire district voted for Donald Trump, but I know that there have been people that, have been attacked on the street and that sort of thing.
There are people that, yes, but right now, I mean, the American people have spoken, including your state,
that's right,
including Jay's state. You're all from the great state of Ohio. People have spoken, and this is part of who we are as Americans, as patriots. We have a democratic process, and at least you got to hand it to Hillary Clinton and President Obama for encouraging a peaceful transition. What the heck is Harry Reid doing out there trying to feed this kind of stuff, Jay?
Well, Capri makes a lot of great points up there, and she always does. What's really funny about this is these protests. And look, I was one that did not support Donald Trump. I left my ballot blank. But I'm going to support my president-elect because we need to get behind him.
Because, by the way, everybody's jumping on board now that he won, right? Sorry.
Well,
I don't mean to tease you, look, help me understand what the heck Harry Reid is trying to do by encouraging this behavior.
And what I don't really understand about this is the violence. Everyone's allowed to protest, and that's okay. That's our American right. But this violence is actually counterproductive for the left, because a lot of people that didn't support Donald Trump, Republicans, independents, people that respect the office of the presidency, are now going to be drawn to him because he is the president-elect, and they want him to succeed. So I think there's it really doesn't do what the left wants right here.
The political hacks out there, they still don't want him to succeed because they want to create this tension, and I think that's why you're seeing Harry Reid Reid say what he says. Meanwhile, you got the media, and we've got more on that in a minute, and the media effectively helping to fuel this and basically putting their stamp of approval on all of this. So much so that there are many now in the business community that seem to think it's okay to be anti-Donald Trump, anti the President of the United States right now. In fact, one guy actually over at Grubhub, which if you don't know it, it's a site where you can, you can order your lunch online. So Grubhub CEO Matt Maloney came out and said effectively that, you know, if you work at Grubhub and you're a Donald Trump supporter, get out. You have no place at Grubhub, while demeaning, insulting, and ridiculing minorities, immigrants, and the physically, mentally disabled worked for Mr. Trump. I want to be clear that this behavior and these views have no place at Grubhub. If you do not agree with this statement, then please reply to this email with your resignation, because you have no place here. He sent this out right after the election. He has since walked it back and tried to say, look, let me clarify that, you know, I'm not telling people to resign if they voted for Trump, but you saw the first message he sent his employees there. And so it basically is helping to feed this sense of anarchy, this sense that you don't have to accept Donald Trump. Capri.
You know, this is really disturbing. I mean, the fact that a place of employment would suggest that, you know, you can't work there because of your political views, regardless of what they are, you know, is a really disturbing fact. And, you know, again, I voted for Hillary Clinton, somewhat reluctantly, but I voted for Hillary Clinton. And at the end of the day,
I know you were never a Hillary supporter, but you're a Democrat.
Right. But at the end of the day, we all have to work together. We have to make sure that our nation is functioning, that our economy is thriving. And the only way we can do that is if we work together.
You know, and let's not forget, we're all in this together in that we all want jobs. We all want economic prosperity. You guys are from Ohio. 2,000 people were laid off in Ohio right around the time of the election, Capri, there in your district.
That's right.
What do you tell those people who are saying, gosh, you know, I need to be able to take care of my family. I need a future.
I'm heartbroken over it, to be quite honest. You know, I mean, those folks, and again, my home county, Trumbull County, which is where the General Motors Lordstown plant is, they lost 1,600 jobs. The remaining were up in Michigan. But, you know, I was on the phone with them yesterday, and I said, you know, I want to do what I can to maybe bring someone from, you know, Team Trump in to listen to the concerns.
Good for you, Capri. Good for you, because this is what needs to happen in this country. We need to be working together. Enough with the political discourse. Hillary Clinton served her lesson. She never talked to those people out in Ohio. She never resonated with them in Michigan or in Pennsylvania. This is the result. Capri, Jai, good to have you guys here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Worth pointing out, the protest I covered in front of Trump Tower last night came out of nowhere. We reported as it grew around us. Come on. Really? Out of nowhere? Take a look at this Facebook invite for that exact same protest. It came out of somewhere. So why does the media want you to believe something else entirely? Joining me right now, Dan Gaynor from the Media Research Center. Hi, Dan.
Hey.
All right, so CNN is telling us, you know, people just started gathering in the streets, that this came out of nowhere. What's the truth?
Well, the truth is the left has been rioting, burning, vandalizing, attacking people for years. This is not new. Occupy Wall Street, 7,700 arrests for everything from violence to arson to creating chaos. And you've had Black Lives Matter, Ferguson, hands up, don't shoot. They've been doing this for years, and the media treat it like it's no thing. They downplay it. They don't want to talk about the bad. Then they try to portray Trump supporters as violent, even when they're the victims of attack.
So double standard, yet again.
Or it's the one standard. Everything the left does is great. Everything the right does is wrong.
You know, I'm amazed at this whole process, how the media has just gone on this attack. And you know what, Dan? People see through it. People like the folks in Ohio, the ones that just lost their job that Capri Caparo was telling us about, they see through it. And, you know, for whatever reason, the media, they fuel this kind of anarchy while simultaneously leaving the rest of America completely out. Why do you think that is?
Well, because they are just as angry as the protesters. This is a national
and they're using their
temper
pens
tantrum
and their computers.
You know, Right. This is a national temper tantrum. The digital way of doing it is to cover it, to write about it, to tweet about it. And that's what journalists are doing. They're promoting this with stuff by promoting the stories of not my president, the stories about, oh, well, Trump only won the Electoral College. He's the 5th president to win the Electoral College only. And that's still a little unclear whether he will be or not.
You know what, Dan, I think also contributes to this, because I've spent a lot of time scratching my head saying, how is it that my colleagues, you know, on the other side of town are so out of touch with how people really feel and what's going on out there? And I think part of it is the loss of local media. I mean, you think about newspapers all over the country, and they used to have a morning edition, they had an afternoon edition, and employed a lot of people from the town. And people thus read news that was relevant to them. Now, all of a sudden, you've got an environment where that's all outsourced effectively to New York. And so reporters that are in the middle of Manhattan that have their own view are basically feeding that out as opposed to it coming from the ground up. You agree?
Yeah, but even then, some of that's true. But even then, they were left wing. And you look at what the media cherry pick. There was a confrontation with a local reporter last night here during the protests in Baltimore. And it got ugly, and it was clear that the photographer started to feel like he was under threat. There were lots of cursing. The media decided they're going to make a big deal about that when it's right-wingers confronting CNN people. But when it's left-wing protesters,
somehow they understand it. Oh, well, can you blame them, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, a double standard indeed. Dan Gaynor, thank you so much. Donald Trump, everyone, has vowed to get rid of Obamacare. And now that he'll have a Republican Congress, he ought to be able to do it, right? So how's that going to work? And what other reforms can we expect? Repealing Obamacare right after this.
Real change begins with immediately repealing and replacing the disaster known as Obamacare.
We got some breaking news we're bringing to you right now out of Washington. Fox News has confirmed Christie is out as the head of the transition team for President-elect Donald Trump. Sources have confirmed reports that Vice President-elect Mike Pence is going to take over those duties from Governor Christie. This after 2 top Christie aides were convicted in the George Washington Bridge scandal, which happened recently, of course. Here we go. Take a listen. I want you to hear this. Donald Trump, just one day before his stunning, historic victory. Watch him.
You know, my poll numbers are going through the roof. You know why? I really believe a big part of it is Obamacare, because we're going to repeal it and replace it. We'll be terminating Obamacare, and we'll be replacing it with so many different options. But you'll have great health care at a fraction of the cost.
All right, and now a Republican Congress means he probably is in a good position right now to repeal Obamacare and put in something else. And that possibility has been pushing healthcare stocks higher. Gosh, I got to tell you, the whole market, as you know, has been moving higher. We are at historic highs on the Dow Jones Industrial Average. And even right now, if you take a look at the big board, we are up 9 points on the Dow. Here with more on the future of Obamacare is former New York Lieutenant Governor Betsy McCoy. Betsy.
Nice to join you. Here it is, and it will be history.
This is Obamacare?
This is Obamacare.
That's one heavy load you've been carrying.
That's right.
Around.
But clearly the election was a referendum on Obamacare, and the people have spoken. And the fact is about 10 times as many people are being hurt by this law as being helped by it. But nevertheless, the president-elect has plans, and the Republican Congress has plans to replace Obamacare so that people who are being helped with this law will not be left in the lurch.
So how soon can that happen? I mean, he's talked about, you heard him the day before he won the election saying, I'm gonna repeal it and I'm gonna put something better in. What's the timing like?
Well, the good news is that the Republicans in the House and Senate, particularly the House, have been working on a replacement plan for a long time, and their plans are very similar to Donald Trump's plans. So they're ready to act. And there are some rules in Congress that may slow them down a bit, particularly in the Senate with the filibuster rule. I don't want to get in the weeds on that, but that may change very soon. So everyone is on the starting line, but ready to act. And it's good because Millions of people are being penalized for not having this unaffordable health insurance.
And you think about states like, Arizona, where premiums were just going through the roof, upwards of 100%. I think about my small state where I'm from, New Hampshire. I mean, you don't have a very big pool of people that need to be insured. So we've got to find a way to make this more market-oriented, get it across state lines.
That's right. Let me assure everyone that those who are on Medicaid will continue, probably with block grants to the state, which will give states the flexibility to deliver Medicaid more effectively, better service for people who are on that. And people with pre-existing conditions will also be protected under both the Republican House plan and Donald Trump's plan.
So there is a plan. It's going to happen soon. People should take a deep breath. They will still have health care.
Most importantly,
for a cheaper cost.
It's going to protect jobs, because that's the top priority of the Trump administration. More jobs, more take-home pay. And the employer mandate in this law was a job killer.
Can you imagine having to read that as a small business employer? You got to hire all these lawyers and accountants to do it for you, and you just get bogged down in all this regulation.
It was capping employers from hiring more full-time workers, and it was really pushing down hours for part-time workers. That has to stop.
Betsy, let me share with you a Trump tweet from today. Here he is. He writes, "Busy day planned in New York. We'll soon be making some very important decisions on the people who will be running our government." We just got that news out that Mike Pence is now running that transition team. You are being considered for Secretary for Health and Human Services, I have heard. Would you take the opportunity?
Of course, I would be thrilled to serve this president and my country in any capacity. I would be incredibly honored.
And this would be a big priority for you. Obamacare,
and also, the Trump administration is very committed to other health care issues as well. Speeding cures through the FDA, ensuring that people who are facing terminal illnesses have a shot at prolonging their own lives. Fixing health care for veterans. There's a lot to be done in the health care area.
What's your reaction to this news that Mike Pence is going to be taking over as opposed to Chris Christie running the transition?
Well, I've always very much liked Chris Christie, but let's face it, Mike Pence has the ear of Congress. He has very strong personal relationships with congressional leaders. That's important for getting through repeal and replace.
Do you think Paul Ryan stays on?
I have no reason not to believe that. I have no inside information on that. But I know that Mike Pence is going to do a terrific job in the transition because he can bring the Trump personnel and congressional leaders together to really work strongly.
We need that. All right. Interesting times. Thank you so much, Betsy McCoy. All right, let's watch bank stocks for a minute here. You can see that they're rallying right across the board. This is in reaction. Look at that. Morgan Stanley, week to date, up 17%. Goldman Sachs, up 15%. They're loving the idea of Donald Trump in the White House. And it's because they're hoping there will be less regulation. Maybe we'll actually see interest rates move in our lifetimes. We've got the details on Trump's economic agenda and what it means for your jobs, what it means for this market, what it means for all of us. That's next. All right, breaking right now. We're getting more information into us right now from the Trump campaign. He's announcing a new phase of his presidential transition team. Vice President Mike Pence is going to be serving as chairman of this transition team as opposed to Chris Christie. So Mike Pence taking over that role, though Chris Christie will continue in a VP capacity. Peter Barnes is in D.C. He has the latest on this news. Hey, Peter.
Yeah, that's right, Trish. Christie will stay on as a vice chair, and also joining him as vice chair in the transition team is former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, retired Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani, Senator Jeff Sessions will join the executive committee as vice chair, according to the press release just out. And he also named a number of other folks, including his sons, his head fundraiser, Steve Mnuchin, and some members of Congress, Marsha Blackburn and others, Chris Collins, his first supporter in Congress, to assist in the transition team. They're all joining, coming on board as well.
Well, lots of developments, of course. By day, minute by minute, we're on it for everyone. I want to reassure you all of these developments, including, by the way, what he is planning in terms or therefore lack of for the financial companies. And I say lack of because there was concern that if Hillary Clinton had come into office, that she would have imposed a whole new series of regulations, courtesy of her friend Elizabeth Warren. Let's take a look at financial stocks right now. You can see, at least for the week, a number of them have been up significantly. I mean, check out Goldman and Morgan Stanley. They've been surging to levels, gosh, we haven't seen since pre-2008. Following Donald Trump's win. So clearly there is optimism on Wall Street, which you got to admit is a little bit ironic because, you know, Hillary Clinton was Wall Street's candidate. But they're hoping that all those restrictive regulations that have been hurting the banking industry, that have been hurting their ability to loan to everyday Americans will potentially disappear. Peter, what are you hearing in terms of this?
Yeah, that's right. And repealing Dodd-Frank and replacing it as one of the top items on President-elect Trump's pro-business agenda. We've heard also today from the head of the House Financial Services Committee, Jeb Hensarling of Texas, whose name has been floated as a potential Treasury Secretary, also saying that he was on board with doing this because his committee and the House Republicans and the Senate had already passed this effort. So I think we have a soundbite from him. Listen.
The legislation that I have had a chance to brief President-elect Trump on that months ago, and that is our legislation to effectively repeal and replace Dodd-Frank. So again, I hope I can help the President as chairman of the House Financial Services Committee. If they're interested in talking about something else, again, I will certainly answer the telephone.
But, Trish, you also mentioned Senator Elizabeth Warren, a major critic of the big banks and a Trump critic, and she gave a speech yesterday in which she warned Trump and his Republican allies in Congress to back off from repealing Dodd. But it's not all glass half full for the financial institutions. Trish, just last month, Mr. Trump, in a speech, said that he criticized Bill Clinton's repeal of the Glass-Steagall Act from the Great Depression that forced the banks to break up, spin off their investment banking divisions. He said that he favors a 21st century Glass-Steagall. So got to wait and see how all that plays out as well.
And I got to tell you, it's kind of smart. I mean, we have gotten to a stage right now, Peter, where you get these big, gigantic supermarket-type banks like Citibank, and they're effectively using your money and my money to take on risk on the other side of the balance sheet. I mean, why not just separate those out? We go back to how it was in the old days. The risk takers take the risk with their own money. Advisory is its own business, and you know what? The good old savings and loan, traditional, steady, has a place as well. That may be where we're heading, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, given what we've been through. Peter Barnes, thank you so much. For more on how Wall Street is reacting to Trump's big victory, I'm joined right now by the King College economics professor Brian Bremberg and our very own Ashley Webster, live on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. Ashley, I want to go to you first. Yeah. We're looking at a market that's basically trading flat, but it's just been skyrocketing since news of Trump's victory, well, at least since the market opened. What are traders telling you?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because all of I said this earlier, you have all those pollsters and pundits who blew it on election day and their forecasts, and you can say that about the financial analysts. These markets have not gone into free fall. We had some analysts predicting an 11 to 13% drop. Hasn't happened because Donald Trump is seen as having a pro-growth agenda. Yes, the financial stocks, to you and Peter's discussion, have done very well because of the belief that the shackles of regulation are going to be cut away, allowing banks to be more free. They've been awash in cheap money. They just haven't been lending it because they've been looking after their cash balances. They've been hoarding the money instead of lending it out to people to get the economy going. That's the belief. But as with everything else, the devil is in the details, and we don't have any of those yet. But certainly the market's looking forward, looking for growth. Hey,
stay with me, Ashley. I'm here with Brian. And, you know, it seems to me that, you know, they all mean well. Elizabeth Warren, you know, I know for some folks, it's pretty tough to take. But you know what? She means well, and that she wants to protect consumers. But what she doesn't realize is the law of unintended consequences. And the more regulation they put in to so-called protect consumers, the more they're actually hurting the actual market from working.
Well, and it's hurting community
which
banks,
hurts consumers.
it's hurting small banks, which hurts consumers. And that's really where Trump's going to go after things. When it comes to what he's going to change in financial regulation, he's going to want to focus on helping community banks and small banks so they can lend in their local communities. That's
and right now they have so much in the way of red tape. They have to hang on to so much money just in case, in case.
The regulatory costs are so high for them, they can't deal with it like the big banks can. And so he's going to help them first. When you look at what he's going to do, look for the priority there.
The other thing I want to mention, Ashley, we're looking at yields on the 2-year and on the 10-year on government bonds. And what it shows you is there's a little more optimism right now in the overall economy. Tell us about that.
Well, that's remarkable, isn't it? Because it wasn't that low. I remember it was just at 1.5%, already above 2%. That suggests there is tremendous optimism about where the economy will and can go, because we're seeing those yields go up, as you mentioned, on the 2 and the 10-year, suggesting that people see the inflation picking up, the economy growing up, and certainly, you know, not only the banks, but the biotech sector, the drug sector, all of those sectors benefiting from this perhaps deregulation atmosphere, if I want to put it that way. We have to see it happen first, but that is certainly the hope.
Yeah, you know, it's all those doomsdayers that said that the market was actually going to tank if Donald Trump won. They're being proven wrong on the spot. Money doesn't lie. Yes, the market got caught off guard, but there's optimism out there in the way of the potential for new things to be done. Brian, lower taxes, less regulation. I'm a business reporter. We don't have many biases here, but when it comes to, you know, lower taxes and less regulation, I can tell you pretty much any Econ 101 textbook will tell you this is good.
It's growth. I mean, banks want growth. Every sector of the economy wants growth, and Trump is talking growth, 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 and that's why you see these stocks going through the roof.
I can just see him. He's going to be saying, did you see that GDP number? Check out that GDP number. And you know what? Hopefully it'll be a whole lot better than 1.5%, which is where we've been. Thank you so much, Brian and Ashley. Good to see you guys. We're taking a quick break, and we're back with more on how the media is fueling these leftist protests and undermining the very essence of our democracy. That's next.
I would build a great wall, and nobody builds walls better than me, believe me. And I'll build them very inexpensively. I will build a great, great wall on our southern border, and I will have Mexico pay for that wall.
You remember that? You remember day one of the Donald Trump campaign back in June of 2015 when he spoke of building the wall? It became a key part of his rallies. But was it his hardline stance on immigration that fueled his rise to the White House? No, it wasn't. And here's the proof. Despite what the pundits try and say about this being racism, according to Fox News exit polls, more than half the country says the economy was the #1 issue. Only 13% said immigration. And when it came to the economy, overall, I mean, Trump got much higher marks than Hillary Clinton. The Wall Street Journal's Jerry Seid pointed out that Trump's victory came by blowing through all those states that had been considered Democratic firewalls, those Rust Belt states, places where actually she refused to campaign until the very end. And Jerry writes, it was breached in states where damage and job losses suffered in the manufacturing sector by foreign competition and trade pressures, as well as other factors. It is a more obvious voter concern, all of these things, than immigration. Joining me right now with their thoughts on all of it, Liz McDonald and University of Maryland economist Peter Morici. Peter, you know, the left wants us to think that this is racism that's fueling Trump, that his supporters, you know, just wanted to keep others out. And while there may be an element of that in that, you know, look, if you're going to have a country, you need to have borders. What they seem to be missing over and over again is this reality of life in Wisconsin, this reality of life in Ohio and in Pennsylvania for manufacturing workers right now. She wasn't even there in the beginning campaigning or reaching out to them. Isn't it fundamentally a lesson in economics? In other words, these workers are in tough shape, they need help, and they responded.
Well, the immigration issue was a way he used that to get some attention, to get himself into the game. But once into the game, he started connecting with voters throughout the country that are beyond the big metropolitan areas of New York, San Francisco, the people that aren't in finance or software or something like that, and are in the communities like Reading, Pennsylvania, which have been devastated by imports, often unfair competition, benefited by an undervalued currency, first in Japan and then in China. And over again, the establishment in Washington, whether it's Hillary Clinton or Jeb Bush, their view of them was, well, you know, learn how to be a computer coder or something like that. And in many of these communities, that's simply not possible for everyone to do. They felt ignored. He said, I feel your pain, I hear your cries, and I will do something about it. And simply, they elected him president of the United States.
It's amazing to see. There was a piece that had some inside baseball. It came out in last night's Times, and it looked at Clinton's campaign, and it said how her husband actually encouraged her to go after these people, to go after those in the Rust Belt, to talk to them and campaign there. And she wouldn't do it because she said, Liz, those aren't my people. I mean, I guess she was thinking she had women, she had minorities, she had millennials, and guess what? None of those groups showed up the way we saw voters, for example, in Ohio, which, by the way, voters in Ohio, overwhelmingly, they're voting for Donald Trump.
Yeah, it's a good point. And, you know, I don't know why that quote would play out that she would feel that they're not her voters. They certainly were the Bernie Sanders voters. We're talking Democrat union workers. And Peter makes an excellent point. In places like Pennsylvania, union workers who Democrat, they're saying, you know, we don't have a job. We possibly could vote Democrat, but we can't because we don't have a job. And the point is that, you know, when you look at how they went down party lines, you wonder, with the Reagan Democrat did come out, there's going to be 3.5 million less manufacturing jobs. Workers. Those jobs need to be filled as the baby boomers retire. And those people were scared. We live in bubble cities. Not bubble cities. We live in cities.
They're bubble cities. I mean, they've got little bubbles around them of, you know, everybody's at a dinner party saying, oh, my God, can you believe Donald Trump's actually
But my point is,
anything?
The media lives in cities where jobs are pretty plentiful. And they're not in the areas that Peter just pointed out, where the jobs are hurting.
You know, I've spent a lot of time in places like this, and, you know, people remember when it was good. Back in the 70s, for example, and you could graduate from high school and get a good job at the factory and take care of your family, and those days are absolutely gone. And so it's this distant memory, and these towns are really struggling. As we look forward here to, one, the future of hopefully a lot more economic growth, and two, I think it would also be a complete blow up, if you would, of the typical political lines, Peter. I just had Capri Cafaro, who's a Democratic lawmaker in Ohio, on this show saying she wants to work with Donald Trump because she feels like he, right now, is caring more about people in her district than maybe, you know, the Hillary Clintons and Elizabeth Warrens of the world are.
Well, there are two imperatives that came out of this election. One is, remember, the Democrats did win the popular vote, and by a considerable margin, but they didn't connect with these blue-collar white folks that are beyond the big metropolitan areas. They need to connect with them.
This used to be their base.
Well, it used to be, but it's not anymore.
All right, I got to leave it there. That's a good, at the same time, real quick, I get 10 seconds.
At the same time, Republicans have to recognize that group is shrinking demographically, and they're going to have to start to connect with people in big cities that have another agenda.
It's changing everything, and it's amazing. We're witnessing it right here in real time. Liz and Peter, thank you so much. All right, everyone, let's check out these markets here. You can see trading pretty much at the flat line, but it looks like the Dow is on path to close, again, if it can just manage to pop back into the green, in record territory. Tech stocks, they're doing a little better today overall when you look at the NASDAQ Composite Index, but a lot of them, you check out Google, Facebook, Amazon, they're lower right now. And this is about basically a little bit of unease with the pretty critical of some of these titans like Amazon and others. And I got to tell you, they have been extraordinarily critical of him. Investors are concerned about the impact the president-elect's policies might have on those profits and perhaps his distaste for some of the folks running those companies. We're also watching JCPenney, which is way up right now, cutting its sales outlook for the year. However, we're going to have much more on Intel next. Ooh, know, all this hand-wringing, all this concern, all these protests that you've been seeing in the streets. Take a look. You can hear them there, vandalizing cars. This is in Portland, Oregon last night. You know, I keep telling people it's going to be okay. In fact, it's going to be a whole lot more than okay, because finally we have a chance at actually seeing someone who understands business, who understands our economy, go in there and shake up Washington in a way that could make us all more prosperous than ever. We need to give our president-elect a chance. It's our duty as Americans to honor the democratic process. Part of the reason for all this worry and all these protests you're looking at in the street is a direct result of the hysteria of the media. When you have headlines like this, an American tragedy in the New Yorker, or this New York Times opinion piece painting the Trump victory as a major loss for the country, I'll tell you, it aids and abets the left in a way that's unhealthy, in a way that undermines our democratic process. So for all those worried about Trump right now, I say, don't be. Take a break from the mainstream media, because for the first time in recent history, we have an opportunity to reshape our economy in meaningful, lasting ways. And